It was 2:47 a.m. when I finally left the hospital room. My mother had been battling cancer for months, and each night, it felt like I was one step away from losing her. That night, the doctors said there wasn't much more they could do. I told her I'd be back soon, that I needed to go home and check on the family. She smiled weakly, the pain in her eyes not just from the illness, but from the fear of leaving me alone in this world. I didn't want to leave her side, but I had to. My wife, Sarah, had texted me earlier saying everything was fine, that she was handling things with our daughter, Ava. It wasn't until I opened the front door and heard the unsettling quiet of our house that I felt something shift in my gut. The house was eerily still. I walked through the living room, the floorboards creaking beneath me. I noticed a few of Ava's toys scattered on the floor, as if she had left in a hurry. But there was no sign of Sarah. No one was in the kitchen, the bathroom, or the bedroom. I thought maybe Sarah had stepped outside for a moment, but then I heard the faint sound of a door creaking from the basement. My heart skipped. The basement. I hadn't been down there in weeks. I stood at the top of the stairs, staring down into the dim light filtering from the basement. I hesitated. Something didn't feel right, I called out, but the only response was silence. My mind raced through 1,000 possibilities, but none of them made sense. Why was Sarah down there? I thought she'd be in bed, resting after the stress of the day. I descended the stairs slowly, my breath shallow, trying to listen for any sound. The low hum of the furnace was the only thing that greeted me. When I reached the bottom, I noticed the door to the small storage room was closed. This was where we used to store old furniture, boxers, and forgotten things from years past. A place we never used anymore. And yet, it was the one place where Sarah often went to be alone when she needed space. I approached the door cautiously. My hand gripped the handle, and I paused again, this time feeling a cold sweat on my palms. What was I afraid of? I wasn't sure, but a whisper of dread wrapped around my chest. I opened the door, and what I saw inside almost stopped my heart. There, sitting on the floor, her hands bound to a chair, was Sarah. Her eyes were wide, filled with panic, her mouth covered with a dirty cloth. She was shaking, struggling to move, her eyes locked onto mine, and a sense of confusion flooded through me. I rushed to her side, my thoughts spinning out of control. I ripped the cloth from her mouth. "What the hell happened?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She did this!" Sarah gasped, barely able to catch her breath. Ava. She left me down here. I was too stunned to react immediately. My mind couldn't process what I was hearing. Ava, our daughter, but why? Before I could ask anything else, I turned toward the door, suddenly aware of the hollow silence that enveloped the house. Where was Ava? Why would she leave her mother like this? It didn't make sense. I helped Sarah to her feet, and we made our way upstairs. My thoughts were a blur, fear and confusion battling for control. I could feel the tension mounting, the weight of the moment pressing on me. Something terrible had happened in my own home, something that couldn't be undone. By the time we reached the front door, Sarah had calmed down just enough to explain. Her words came out in fragmented bursts, each one making the situation more incomprehensible than the last. She locked me in, she said. She said I needed to pay for what I'd done, that I needed to suffer. My chest tightened at the words. Ava, our daughter, had locked her mother in the basement. But why? There was no logical explanation for this. Ava had always been a sweet child, quiet and thoughtful. Something must have triggered this, but Sarah's next words shattered any semblance of rationality. I found out what you were doing, you and her. Her voice cracked as she tried to speak, but the pain was palpable. I couldn't believe it. She found out about us. The blood drained from my face. I felt like the ground beneath me had just disappeared. What are you talking about? I asked, my voice trembling. But Sarah wasn't finished. She pulled out her phone. The screen cracked from when she must have dropped it in a hurry. She showed me a message. The text still visible, though it was clearly old. It was a conversation between Ava and someone I didn't recognize. I read through the messages, and the truth hit me like a freight train. Ava had known about my affair, the one I'd been having with her best friend's mother. I'd never imagined that Ava would find out. Never thought she'd piece it together. But there it was. The damning evidence. You've been lying to me. Sarah's voice was steady now, but her eyes were filled with disbelief. For how long, Jason? How long were you planning on keeping this from me? I didn't have an answer. I couldn't speak. How could I explain this? The affair had been a mistake, something I regretted every day, but I never imagined it would destroy my family. And now, here we were. My daughter, the innocent one in all this, had learned the truth and felt betrayed. The pain I saw in Sarah's eyes made me want to curl up and disappear. But I didn't have time to wallow. Ava had done something unforgivable. Not only had she betrayed her mother's trust, but she had gone so far as to trap her in that basement, leaving her to suffer. I didn't know how to fix this, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't just let this go. I rushed to find Ava, hoping that maybe, just maybe, I could talk to her and make sense of what had happened. But when I reached her room, the door was locked. A sense of dread crept up my spine. I banged on the door, calling her name, but there was no response. Nothing. I kicked the door open, my anger now mixing with fear. What I found inside made my blood run cold. Ava wasn't there. The room was empty, save for a letter on the bed. I walked over to it, my hands trembling as I picked it up. The handwriting was shaky, hurried. It read, I know what you did. I know everything. And I'm going to make you pay. My heart sank. Ava had left, but she hadn't gone far. She was planning something that would hurt me, hurt Sarah. The feeling of betrayal cut deeper now, because I realized that the child I thought I knew was capable of far worse than I ever imagined. I couldn't let her get away with it. I had to stop whatever she was planning before it was too late. But first, I needed to gather everything I could. The truth was now out, and I had to be ready for whatever Ava had in store. I went through the house quickly, searching for anything that might help, anything that would give me an advantage over the betrayal that had just been exposed. My mind raced as I thought back to all the moments with Ava. How had I missed the signs? What had gone wrong? The guilt hit me like a wave. I'd hurt my family. I'd hurt my daughter. And now, I needed to fix this. I gathered my things and prepared to leave. If Eva had gone to plan her revenge, I needed to be one step ahead of her. I called in a few favors, reached out to some contacts, and used all my resources to track her down. It didn't take long before I got a lead. Ava had gone to the old cabin in the woods, the one she used to love as a child. It was the same cabin I had taken her to for a weekend camping trip when she was younger. I never thought I'd be chasing my daughter down in the same place, but revenge had taken root in her heart, and now it was my turn to act. I couldn't afford to let my emotions rule me. I had to be smarter than this. Ava had set her plan in motion, and I had to outsmart her if I was going to save my family. The drive to the cabin was long, and my mind was racing. How had this gone so wrong? I should have seen the signs earlier, but no. I had been blind to the damage I was causing. The affair, the lies, and now my daughter was setting a course for destruction. When I finally arrived, I saw her standing by the edge of the cabin, her back to me. I could feel the tension in the air as I approached. Ava didn't turn around. I know what you're planning, Ava, I said, my voice steady but low. She stiffened, but didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone, unlocking it to show me a live streaming video. My heart stopped as I watched Sarah, my wife, bound to a chair, gagged and beaten. This was it, the final straw. I wasn't going to let my daughter destroy everything. I reached into my bag, pulling out the documents I'd prepared. The proof, the hard evidence, the calls I'd recorded, the letters. With a single press of a button, I sent them to the authorities. The truth would come out. Ava's face contorted with disbelief as she realized what I had done. Don't, she whispered. I have no choice, I replied. The cabin fell silent, and in that silence, I finally understood the moral truth of it all. Betrayal never ends well. The truth, no matter how painful, always finds its way to the surface. Ava's eyes filled with tears. But I didn't feel sorry. She had crossed a line, and now there was no turning back. For the first time in a long time, I felt a strange sense of peace. I had done the right thing. The truth was out, and I could finally breathe again. As I stood there in the silence, I realized that I had been living a lie. My marriage, my relationship with Ava, it had all been built on secrets and deception. But now, there was no more pretending. Ava looked at me, her face a mixture of anger and regret. She was still a child, but in that moment, I knew she had become something else. "You don't understand," she said, her voice shaking. "You don't know what you've done." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The damage had been done, and I couldn't undo it. I took a deep breath and turned to leave. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, I felt like I was in control. I had to let go of the guilt, the shame, and focus on the future. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I knew it was the only path I could walk now. As I stepped out of the cabin, I felt the weight of the world lift off my shoulders. In the end, truth and justice had prevailed. No matter how painful, the truth always finds its way to the surface.